So, sequel to Breath of the Wild looks pretty good.
What are you doing? What the hell?
Title reveal? Title reveal.
What is this? What is this?
I am beyond hyped for this game. Breath of the Wild was the first game that truly showed me what video games could be. Today we're going to look into 11 things that I think Tears of the Kingdom could do to not just make it the game of the year, but perhaps land it on the podium of the greatest Zelda game of all time. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe. If you feel like it, you can even comment. Now, on to the video. To start, dungeons. You know them, you love them, you probably hate a couple of them too. Dungeons are the core of not just the Zelda formula, but most action-adventure games as well. Breath of the Wild's dungeons, while fun, were pretty boring by the time you got to the final ones, seeing as they had the exact same interior, the exact same enemies, and the exact same boss, just with different attacks and slightly different designs, but I'll get to that later. What I think Tears of the Kingdom needs to do is have a substantial amount of dungeons, all with unique looks, enemies, and bosses, much like the dungeons of old. A forest dungeon hidden beneath a Deku Tree, an ice temple beneath Mount Hebra, or even a sky dungeon temple thing, much like the ones we see in the trailers. They could all be spread between the surface of the sky and would bring so much more to the table in terms of storytelling and gameplay. I believe that the 7 orbs around the mysterious figure on the carving are representing 7 dungeons throughout the world, and the orbs themselves, or maybe the swirls within them, are the 7 MacGuffins of the story, much like the 7 sages of Ocarina of Time, or the instruments of the Sirens in Link's Awakening. Besides, the game obviously isn't going to focus on the Sheikah this time around, so having more Divine Beasts wouldn't really work anyway. The second thing Tears of the Kingdom needs to do in order to be better than its predecessor is have new enemies. And no, I don't just mean bokoblins with longer horns, I mean brand new creatures Link can encounter on his adventures. Breath of the Wild had a lot of creatures to fight, but excluding the mini-bosses and higher ranks of enemies, there are bokoblins, moblins, keese, choo-choos, Zalfos, Lionels, Yiga foot soldiers, Yiga blade masters, wizrobes, and guardian scouts, stalkers, watchers, and turrets. These enemies are fun to fight, don't get me wrong, but the strategies for fighting them are all the same most of the time. Parry this, dodge that. Just thinking about all the returning enemies that could make their comeback in Tears of the Kingdom is making me excited. Iron Knuckles, the Dongos, Aerofoss, those weird guys that spit explosives. The possibilities are endless, and seeing as Nintendo have over 35 years of source material, I doubt they'll find any excuse not to have new creatures for Link to fight on his journey. In the newest trailer for Tears of the Kingdom, we see that Breath of the Wild's traversal and mechanics are getting an update. Climbing, swimming, jumping, and sprinting are all most likely still present, however, we now have the ability to reverse time on objects, as well as new ways to dive off of the floating islands above Hyrule. From these concepts filed by Nintendo show us, we may be able to use our bow while diving off an island, which will not only look like the coolest thing on Earth, but would also be an interesting mechanic for things like boss fights, or encounters with dragons that thanks to the trailer, we know are still going to be present. There's also the matter of reversing time. We see that Link can use it on objects such as metal balls and falling rocks, but wouldn't it be cool if we got a boss fight based around reversing its movements in order to hit a weak spot or something? We also know that the paraglider is going to be included, but there are probably going to be changes made so it's easier to use in the air, unless we could use something else to travel. Introducing Bird. I know, Skyward Sword already did this, but this bird thing we see in the trailer might act as some sort of mount that Link, when he falls off an island and is heading to the surface, is used to glide to wherever he wants to go, like the paraglider, but without stamina. It is also worth noting that in the first couple of seconds of gameplay, we see Link has an object on his hip filled with glowing green vials. Now, whether these vials act as some sort of healing potion or fuel for his new items is yet to be seen, but the green glow of the tubes suggests the latter. One thing I personally think Breath of the Wild nailed was the soundtrack, and the sequel is going to need to try very hard to top what I believe is some of the best songs of the franchise. You really have it all, from the relaxing shores of Llewellyn Village, all the way to the incredible main theme. Am I forgetting anything? You know you're in for a tough battle when the boss's music hits as hard as his attacks. I've recently been listening to the soundtrack on YouTube while taking the bus to and from school, and I could just say that the way the songs seamlessly switch, pardon the pun, from the day versions to the night versions is nothing short of magical. Tears of the Kingdom needs to have an incredible soundtrack to fit with its gameplay, and from what we have heard so far, it's very good. The main theme, or at least what we can assume is the main theme, is good, but Breath of the Wild is better. But then again, we can't really judge until the game comes out. One of my favourite quests, in not just Breath of the Wild, but in all of gaming, is the Tarrytown quest. This long quest requires Link to search Hyrule for potential residents and gather materials for houses, before finally finishing the mission with 3 diamonds in his pockets, and the best vendor in the game, in my opinion. Shout out to my buddy Faison. Most other quests in Breath of the Wild, by comparison, are fine. I mean, they could be better. Hey Link, please give my wife one of the hundreds of apples in your inventory so she won't break up with me. Oh, yeah man, sure. Here's your apple, I guess. This is how most of the quests in Breath of the Wild go, and while I don't think Tears of the Kingdom is going to change much, I think we might see a handful of longer side quests. Maybe we could defend Hateno Village from waves of bokoblins before donating wood and other materials to help repair the damage they caused. Maybe there's a quest to help rebuild Akala Citadel. All of the quests I'm suggesting here are based on donating materials to build something, but considering the damage the Great Calamity caused, it makes the most sense and encourages the player to go out into the world and gather materials. One of the most controversial changes in Breath of the Wild was the addition of weapon durability, and while this isn't necessarily a bad thing, incredibly powerful weapons literally made by the gods could also break or run out of energy. I think Tears of the Kingdom has 2 options when talking about weapon durability. 1, add an easy mode that removes weapon durability and makes enemies deal less damage, or 2, add the ability to craft weapons and repair damaged ones. I think we all know which one of those sounds more interesting. One of the best aspects of Breath of the Wild was the ability to customize Link's armor by mixing and matching armor sets and then changing the default colors of those sets. But I often just stuck with the now classic Champion's Tunic and Hylian trousers. There were so many options for players to express themselves with wild and wacky armor combos. From what we have seen so far, Link's wardrobe looks pretty similar. He's still wearing the Champion's Tunic, but this time there's a lot of extra bits and pieces attached. There's also this new sky outfit, which is almost toga-like. The interesting thing is Link's hair when he is wearing this set. He has it out of his ponytail, but when he is wearing the Champion's Tunic, he has his hair done back up. Does this mean we're going to be able to customize Link's hair as well as his armor? More likely though, the different styles are probably tied to the respective armor that Link is wearing, much like the Gerudo male set he could wear in Breath of the Wild. Although I would like to be proven wrong and have a fully customizable character this time around. As brought up in the dungeon sections of the video, it isn't just the Divine Beast that suffers from repetitiveness of the aesthetic, but the boss suffers as well. They are mostly the same, just with different movesets and slightly different designs. Even Ganon himself, the big bad, was just the 4 blights combined into a singular boss. A Dark Beast Ganon, while cinematic as hell, is easier than most mid-game enemies. I personally love the design of the Blights in Age of Calamity, as well as Ganon, and would have loved to see the Blights in Breath of the Wild looking more like that. Tears of the Kingdom could not only reintroduce classic bosses, but add cool new ones. Maybe the Deku Tree is being infected by Gomer again, or the Gerudo are fighting off some sort of Leviathan like the skeletons we see lying around in Breath of the Wild. These bosses don't need to be strictly in dungeons. Overworld bosses like the Tauros and Hinox could be replaced or upgraded with more powerful enemies capable of leveling whole villages. Tears of the Kingdom has some of the most potential for a video game I've ever seen, and it would be such a shame if it would have gone to waste in the form of uninteresting boss fights. Though a lot of people had issues with Breath of the Wild story, I personally loved it. I thought the memories were a fun world building technique, and I loved the characters of Zelda and the other champions, but the voice acting could be a bit cheesy at times. Where Tears of the Kingdom needs to succeed is the story, 100%. With a worrying lack of Zelda in the latest trailer, I think our chances of becoming playable like we all hoped are becoming slimmer by the day, but this does give Link's character a chance to grow. What was originally intended to be a blank slate character is now a fully fledged person, but is in desperate need of just something. If Link retrieves all of his memories and defeats Ganon, the player will be greeted with a special post-credits scene in Breath of the Wild. Link and Zelda stand, overlooking Hyrule with silent princess flower petals flying around them. More cutscenes like this hinting at Link and Zelda's relationship would add a lot to the story, seeing as Zelda's feelings for the hero were heavily hinted at and outright stated by Cass. Shout out to my buddy Cass. Tears of the Kingdom has potential to not just be better than its predecessor Breath of the Wild, but also have the best story in the whole series. If you have been in the Breath of the Wild community at all, I'm sure you would have heard of the Zonai, a mysterious magical tribe that once lived in the land of Hyrule alongside the Sheikah. They built the dragon, owl, and boar ruins we see dotting the land, particularly the Faron region, which is believed to be their home. They are also responsible for the 3 labyrinths, each on the very corners of the kingdom. The Zonai were hinted at to have some sort of connection all the way back in Tears of the Kingdom's first teaser trailer back in 2019, and since have appeared in the second trailer in the form of this Zonai flamethrower shield attachment thingy. But their most prominent role ever is in the newest trailer where the logo of the game literally features 2 of the infamous Zonai dragons. Not only that, but various Zonai-esque imagery is seen throughout the trailer. It is without question at this point that the Zonai will have some involvement in Tears of the Kingdom, but what that involvement and to what extent is yet to be revealed. One of the things Zelda fans have been begging for since Breath of the Wild is the ability to rebuild Hyrule after the events of the game. Tears of the Kingdom is most likely going to show us some rebuilt settlements and villages. This ties heavily into the side quests part of the video, where we might see Link donating materials to rebuild towns and citadels, but on the other side of the coin, we have the potential new ruins of Hyrule. The latest trailer shows Hyrule Castle floating over a fountain of malice. This was first shown to us at E3 last year. However, Hyrule Castle isn't the only area infested by malice. If you look over to Death Mountain, instead of the signature lava and volcanic ash, malice is erupting from its crater. This might mean that Ganondorf's malice we saw back in 2019 is spreading underground and has emerged from both under Hyrule Castle and Death Mountain. Also of note is the absence of the Great Deku Tree, which cannot be seen at its usual spot behind the castle. All Sheikah technology is also now absent from the world, with both towers and shrines being nowhere to be found, and on the opposite ridge where the Tabantha Bridge stable shrine used to be, is what appears to be a stone structure with some kind of green energy spiraling out of it. Across Hyrule are multiple green patterns in the shape of a woman. These could be anything from the mysterious figure, to the 8 heroines, to the 7 sages, or Princess Zelda herself. Speaking of Zelda, our final point today is going to be discussing her role in Tears of the Kingdom. Now, I don't think Nintendo is going to make her a damsel in distress again. She's bound to have more of an active role. But there's a theory I've been circulating online, one that may in fact just change the future of the series, and one that I personally believe is most likely. The symbols of dragons in circular shapes throughout the trailer might point towards the endless cycle of reincarnation and destruction that Demise set in place a millennia ago coming to an end. This theory is supported by the shot behind the title reveal of what we can assume is Zelda cupping hands with a mysterious figure in the first shots. This figure has been theorized to be everything from the goddess Hylia to a Zonai deity, to Vati, and even Faror. We won't be able to know for certain until the game's release, however, but I think Tears of the Kingdom may just be the most important Zelda game in the series when taking all of the above into account. Breath of the Wild is my favorite game of all time. It was truly the first like it I had ever played, and still to this day I am replaying it, as you should have seen by the footage on screen for most of the video. If you haven't played it yet, I honestly would recommend buying a Nintendo Switch just to play it. It is worth the full price any day. And to think the sequel is not just going to improve on what made Breath of the Wild one of the greatest games of all time, but add new content, features, and new story to rival that of even Ocarina of Time and Skyward Sword. I will 100% be making videos on Tears of the Kingdom when it comes out, but that's going to be a while away. Remember, if you enjoy the content, remember to leave a like, comment if you feel like it, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay safe and stay subscribed.